Hello there, it's Antony Carpen here for Vloguary number 26th of January, and I'm watching Liverpool losing to Stoke at home at Anfield. A team that it just seems to be completely anonymous compared to the teams of the past. I grew up on football, used to the Liverpool dominance of the 1980s, and it was one hell of a team that they had in those days. Current lot, not a patch on it, and struggling against Stoke City, who, I guess in the grand scheme of things, are doing the best they've done in many a year. Are making a good go of it. Anyway, on the front page of the local paper today, John Vale had an article about a building site, the old John Lewis depot, which is being converted into student flats despite opposition from many campaigners on kind of that side of town over there in Romsey. And there seems to be a repeated pattern of, and it's not just happening here, it's happening elsewhere, where a local council makes a decision on whether to go ahead with something, and a speculative developer always appeals to a planning inspector who nearly always seems to rule in favour of the developer. Yes, we've got a big housing crisis. We know that. In the same paper, I think John quoted a figure of Cambridge's average house price being over £460,000 in 2015, which is just crazy. How can anybody afford to live there? Hence why I'm here in the house of mum and dad. So, in the grand scheme of things, just everything structurally seems to be wrong. Whether it's the powers and the revenue raising powers that local councils have to their ability and their authority to just be able to manage their own cities. Having worked in Whitehall, it's impossible to micromanage communities and cities from afar in those great white ivory towers and the glass towers of Victoria Street, Marsham Street and Whitehall. I just can't get my head around it. When we look at it from a Cambridge level, I think in particular with that housing development, there's a lot of concern just generally about student accommodation, whether it's the growth of Anglia Ruskin to just the cramming colleges, student accommodation being one of those pieces of accommodation that doesn't have council tax tied to it. So it means that local councils are inevitably starved of resources on that front, and are nowhere near compensated for it, certainly by central government. So it's not a case of just having one simple policy that will solve it. It requires a complete overhaul. I just don't think that the Westminster and Whitehall political classes have got what it takes to actually deliver something actual that that will work, not just for the affluent cities such as Cambridge, but the so-called northern powerhouses who, despite the rhetoric, still seem to be struggling. Anyway, 5 minutes to go, and it looks like it's going to go into extra time. Night night.